welcome to the On the Spot podcast, where we talk to people from all walks of recovery. And brought to you by the Spot Sober Lounge. What is the Sober Lounge, you might ask? Which is, that's a great question. It's a place for people in recovery go to fellowship and take an environment that encourages and supports recovery. Spot is located off of 43rd and Northern. And it also manages daily. It's a vape shop, custom apparel store, and a nonprofit that does a livelihood for a lot of people. This guest is one of the most entertaining, informative, and amazing examples of what's possible in this program. There's a lot of sponsors. He's a very talented musician and visual artist in both photography and film. He's part of a men's group that I go with, actually two different men's groups that I go to. And you might not have seen him perform at Soberfest because he was busy doing the service and practicing the principles and all of the affairs. If you ever need a wedding, a bar mitzvah, or a divorce, or promotional photos for your band, whether your band sucks or not to be taken, or you just need a sponsor, this guy can definitely help. This is the illustrious Matteo. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for that awesome intro.
You're welcome. I just picture when you're not in a room, it's photographing shitty bands and weddings.
Anything and everything, dog. I shoot it all.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to jump right in. So you're originally from back here, so you got sober there. How did you facilitate the transition here as far as your recovery goes? And what are the similarities and or differences between where you're from and here?
Yeah, really great question, dude. So, I got sober in a small town right outside of Chicago, in the northwest suburbs, and really hit the ground running when I got sober the second time. This is not my first time sober, and when at about 9 months sober, I moved out to Pennsylvania, and when I moved out there, I really got disconnected from 12-step recovery as a whole, and I reaped the benefits and the consequences of that. I spent a large chunk of my now 8 years of sobriety untreated, causing a lot of damage, managing sober living, stealing from that sober living as the manager, kicking dudes out off of resentments, dating newcomers. I was in a really bad way. And, I talk about this a lot when I talk about the steps, but, it's really easy to get physically sober, but you can still be sober and still be the same piece of shit that you were when you walked in. And that was my experience at 4.5 years sober when I was ready to end my life. And so when I moved out here and I met my first sponsor and he got me connected to the men's groups that I'm a part of now, it changed my life because I'd never experienced recovery in that way. And it was the first time I had experienced even a taste of it, let alone something at that level and that degree in a very long time. And so I feel like there were a lot of differences just because in general, the Midwest is just different than, the West, obviously. Personalities differ, traditions, just kind of like how meetings are run, the way that they pray, the way that they do this, the way that they do that is all very different. But when I came in, I was so beaten up, sober, right? Spiritually bankrupt, sober, that I didn't care. I was just ready to do it all.
Oh man, and I completely relate to what you're saying. Like, I think recovery here is different than it is anywhere else. I went out to Florida recently and hit a meeting out there, and it was just different. Like, it was an open air meeting, they called it, which means there's no cursing, no smoking, no vaping. And like, I was from out of town, so of course they like called on me to speak, and I'm like, I can't curse. What the fuck am I gonna say? It was
Yeah.
like, it was a bad sign when I walked in, and there's a huge plaque that says swearing is not a sign of spiritual growth. I'm like, oh, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
So I know you do. So as I mentioned, you do photography. Was photography and music or like any of the other arts something you did while getting loaded? And how did you manage to keep your creative edge being sober? I feel it's something a lot of people are afraid they're gonna lose when they get sober.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine, Sponsy, about this because he's just getting sober. He makes music and he just had all these questions about how he was going to get sober and still be the same artist. And, to be honest, I was garbage at making music before I got sober. I used to rap with my plug, and we'd go to the studio and make these horrible songs, and I thought I was the best in the world. And I vividly remember a good friend of mine, a student LJ. I would send him songs, and he'd be like, "Dude, don't show this to anybody else. It's not good." And I would just get so mad. And as I, when I got sober and I continued to make music, I started like really learning about the art of making music. It wasn't just about writing a verse or just about trying to like impress my friends. It was really about one, expressing myself, and then two, like there are specific things to learn about writing choruses and about writing bridges and learning about song structure. And so, as I got and stayed sober, I got to meet some really cool people when I lived out in Pennsylvania. Big shout out to Rotation Records and specifically their head engineer and co-owner Tom. I mean, that dude shaped the way I made music and really taught me a lot of what I know today. Um, and what I say about like people losing their edge is like the fact is your music is going to change. I used to rap about selling drugs and getting high and crimes that I would commit or allegedly would commit. And like, I just, that's not my life today. I go to an AA meeting on a Tuesday night, or I sit down with a dude and talk about the things that are messing him up and blocking him off from God. I just can't bring myself to rap the same. So you have to be comfortable. Like, there's that saying, like, the only thing you have to change about yourself is everything, right? And it's true, but like the truth is you're gonna change, and like learning to accept that you're gonna change. And as a result of that, so is your music, and that's okay. You just have to be like ready for it and be willing to let it happen rather than trying to stick back to the old like mold that you created.
And then, there's a lot of stuff that's going to change when you get sober, and there's a lot of stuff. The way I put it is like when I was first getting sober, I was really big this time around about executing spiritual principles and everything that I do. Because like I can't just be that guy that goes to a meeting and says some good shit, and then like when nobody's watching, brand new comers still
Yeah.
do that shit. I can't do that. I'd like be happy. And like if I'm not going to be happy being sober, I'm definitely going to be loaded because like. Yeah, no, it's awesome. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's fucking awesome. But like, what's even better? Like being able to sleep at night and like fucking know I'm not a bad person. I mean, I'm still a pretty shitty person. But I
Yeah.
mean, I was like fucking trying to go for it today and try to come. My
Yeah.
father told me this time around, he's like, there's a lot of things that you're gonna have to do that you don't want to do at first, but the more you do them, the more you want to do them. The
Yeah.
more you progress as a person, the better you're gonna want to become. So
And dude,
yeah.
I had a guy tell me, because like I go through periods of like desire to do AA and desire to sponsor and desire to be of service, and they ebb and flow, right? There are periods of my life where it's really easy and I don't even think about it and it just kind of comes. And then there's times where I like debate picking up the phone, right? And I debate wanting to go to the meeting in my head, and I'll try and convince myself. And the fact is, a friend of mine said it really, really plainly. He said, dude, like, try not to be hard on yourself on wanting to go, just be strict about going. And that's what I always try and keep in mind is like, it doesn't actually matter if I want to or not. Like, if I don't want to, I should probably look at it, see if there's something going on. But if I'm just in a season of not wanting to go, then I just have to continue to be strict about going. And then it doesn't really matter anyways, because I'm still ultimately like, filling my bank account up and continuing to add to that savings that I always call, like I like to talk about, that savings of recovery.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's like going to your job. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's been days I did not want to go, but I went because I have to pay rent. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I look at like the meetings as like what I have to do to like pay the rent to like the fucking soul. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I've been so fucking disconnected for so long that like most of the time when I don't want to go to a meeting, I wind up going and having a decent time anyway. There's been plenty of nights I didn't want to go to the stag, but like I wanted to see everyone that goes there. I wanted to see Max. I wanted to see Tom. I wanted to see you guys. You know what I'm saying? And then I went up back in the great friend. We just sit in the back and talk shit, and it's fucking amazing.
Yeah,
I I
absolutely.
I've never. I've never been like shit. I don't want to go to the uni, and then went and not heard something that I needed to fucking hear.
And I'm really big on like because I hear there's a lot of things like that. Like for me, I definitely agree. Like I typically do find something in the meeting, but I really encourage everyone, like, whether you hear something or you don't, right? Whether you have a good time or you don't, it's really the fact is like I could just be having a bad day. I could be having an off week. I could be having an off month. I mean, the last couple of months for me haven't been like the easiest, right? Like I had lost a sponsee, and been navigating that. As soon as I got back from that, had been laid off from work. And so like it was just a hard couple months. But like once again, and when I walked into meetings, did I want to be there? Did I want to tell people about how I was feeling or how I was doing? Absolutely not. And did I all the time? No. Sometimes I just didn't talk about it. I just kind of had fun and talked trash and whatever. But like at the end of the day, I showed up, I did what I was supposed to do by showing up. And like if I was called on, I answered. If a dude asked me to sponsor him, I said yes. Right. And like I did the things that I needed to be strict about doing. And as a result of that, like now, 3, 4 months later, things are starting to swing up. Right. I'm feeling better. I'm having guys that are getting through the steps. I had the privilege of being able to go to that funeral and meet his family and open the funeral and like just do things that like God put me in the position to do. And that's really all I'm here to do. It's not my life, it's God's anyways.
And that's something I want to talk about for a second. And it's like this, I do the little things in my recovery, so when the big shit happens, like I know how to fucking handle it. Like no, like you had a really good career that you like transitioned into another role, uh, with a different company, flooded me, wanting to like transition out of like where you had a really stable job, a good career. Then you went to a different company thinking, oh, I want to help people, I want to do this, that, and the other. And then that didn't work out. And now you're doing something else. But I mean, I know in recovery, we're going to experience like the loss of people, the loss of jobs. How do you get through that transition? What, if for anyone that's out there that might be going through like the loss of a job or a person in their life that they give a shit about, how do you get through that?
Yeah, dude, I think, I mean, obviously, like, first and foremost, and this isn't just some like cutesy thing I say, like, my relationship with God is ultimately the only thing that has gotten me through all of the things that I've been through, right? Um, and for me, it really boils down to, and I talk about this so much, and I don't remember where I heard it, but I think about it like this, right? Like, when I get sober, I use God like a vending machine. And, A1, keep me sober. B2, can I get a car and a job? C3, can I get a girlfriend and a haircut? And God expects that of me, right? Because when I come in, I don't have anything to offer. I need to be poured into. I need to have some things removed from me to be okay. And so, like, after some time though, right? When I'm later on in the steps, when I'm starting to sponsor guys, in step 11, it says I have to grow this relationship with him. And a relationship is a two-way street. And, for anybody that's watching that's heard me speak has probably heard this every single time I spoke because it's just so true to me. If I have a relationship with a significant other and I spend 5 minutes in the morning with them and I spend 5 minutes at night with them, I'm not really going to have a good relationship, because it's 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night and everything else in between is all about me. But I treat God like that when I first get sober. And so, over time that develops. And as a result of that, like I get to have a true relationship. I get to start to like really listen and hear like where he would have me go. And it's not like an audible voice, but it's like an intuitive thought or feeling of like, hey, I want you to go here. Hey, there's a dude sitting there. I want you to ask him if it's his first time here, ask him his name, welcome him. Right. And so those are the things that have helped me get through them. Aside from that, my sponsor, right? The first person I called when my sponsee passed away and when I lost my job was my sponsor because I didn't know what else to do. And I talked to him about it. And did he say some life-changing thing? No. But he just said, "Thank you for letting me know. Let me know if there's anything you need. I'm going to let the guys know if that's okay with you. And people are probably going to reach out." And people did. They called me, "Hey, are you good? Do you need anything?" Right? And they checked in for multiple weeks, making sure I was good, during this really tough period. And and then aside from that, like I just have really good friends, right? Like I have
Yeah.
a good support system, good friends, and I guess like really lastly, I know I say that all the time, but like lastly, like my life isn't built on one thing. Right? Like the center of my life is God. It tells me that in the third step, God's the keystone. And I found that to be true for my life. And so if God's the keystone of my life, then it actually doesn't matter if any of these other things go away, because as long as I keep him at the keystone, the ark's going to stay in place. And so my identity and my value aren't found in my job. My identity and my value aren't found in sponsorship or in AA, right? Like they're found in the relationship that I have with God and the man that I become with him. And as a result of that, I get to bring that identity to those areas of my life.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I heard you say, if you spend 5 minutes in the morning with someone and 5 minutes at night, you're not gonna have a good relationship. So That's what I think a lot of people struggle with. And I mean, I just want to let whoever's out there know it doesn't happen overnight, but like, and I'm far from perfect with it. But it all starts with like when you start to trust God, like, what situation do I trust God being in my life? You know what I'm saying? What situation am I willing to bring God into? And the truth is, you should probably just let God go there before you show up. You know what I'm saying? If there's a situation you don't know how to handle, let him show up first, you show up next, or not at all, really. And then, things tend to work out. But I mean
Yeah.
that sort of trust doesn't happen overnight. How was that something that you were able to establish with God? Like, what were the steps you had to take, or was that just something that happened by osmosis from working the steps?
I mean, some of that is just by osmosis. Some of that is because of the friendships and the relationships that I had, right? Like watching these men go through things and like learning from them as a result of that. And then honestly, just by experience, right? Like I went months without praying when I lived in Pennsylvania. And I remember just sitting in the back of my job crying, calling the first sponsor I ever had, and just like not knowing what was going on. And him and I talked for a while, and he just out of nowhere said, "What's your prayer life look like?" And I said, "Dude, I didn't even realize it. I haven't prayed in 6 months, right? Because I got all prideful when I got to the sober living, and these dudes were cool, right? And I didn't wanna get on my knees and pray in front of them in the morning, and I didn't wanna get on my knees and pray at night, and I got fearful, and that became the driving force. And so, I remember when he said that, I went home that night and I just prayed. And every morning and every night that became the routine for me because that's what I had to do at that point. And then over time, like things would come up and I'd start praying in the middle of my day because someone bothered me or someone made me uncomfortable or I started feeling some fear. And the prayer life just kind of grew because it became more of a working part of my mind. And even still, right, at 8 years sober, right, like my time doesn't mean anything. It's just like it ebbs and flows. And when my sponsee passed away, I went 2 months just angry at God. And I didn't pray. And I talked to my sponsor, but he said, you know what you're going to do? You're going to pray in the morning, you're going to pray at night, and then you're going to set an alarm for this time, this time, and this time. And you're going to say a prayer at each of those alarms so that no matter what, you have 3 touch points throughout the day where you're reminded of God. And once again, it just became a working part of the mind where the alarm, I knew the alarm was coming. I could feel it. And even outside of the alarm times, I'm praying and I'm meditating so that once again, I can grow closer.
And then, I'm sorry to hear about your sponsee. Like, I can relate to that. This is my second time in recovery. Like, I had a 2 years, 4 months at one point, and I remember
Mhm.
the very first sponsee. Because the old joke. Your sponsors need to say this. I don't know if they still do, but they're like, "Don't worry about sponsors. You don't want to kill your first one." Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Well, my very first sponsee actually did die.
Mm.
So I like called my sponsor. I'm like, "I fucking did it," and he was like,
Yeah.
"What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I think I killed my first sponsee." And like, so I mean, that hit me hard. So yeah, I know what you're going through, and I'm sorry for your loss. But I mean, and the fact of the matter is just people who don't get sober. That's just what happens to us, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think what you were saying with the God thing, everyone that comes into the rooms, I think, struggles with the idea of God a little, unless it was like something that they had in their life beforehand. But if they really did have that, would they have been using? That's always the question I struggle with. But uh, I would say, yeah, like for one people out there, in my opinion, and my sponsor has said this, even if I'm wrong about the idea of God and he like doesn't exist, what's the worst thing that happens? I lived like a decent life and was a decent human being. Hey, whoops, that's the worst
Yeah.
thing that could possibly happen by like living a life of spiritual principle.
Yeah. And I think what you said about like there's people that have this concept of God before they walk in. There's people who, had a relationship, right, with God before they came in. There's people who didn't like God at all. I was one of those. I was devoutly against any type of religion, any mention of God. I was open to the idea of spirituality because it was loose and they told me I could believe in a chair, not in the rooms, but they told me that in like a psych ward. I like psych wards. I don't like treatment centers. They address your drug problems. Psych wards don't. And so, for me, right, like, my sponsor said it to me really, really plainly. He said, Matteo, do you put the sun up in the morning? I said, no. He said, do you put the sun down at night? I said, no. He said, if a wave comes crashing, can you stop it? I said, no. He said, so would you say that whatever does that is a power greater than yourself? I said, yeah. And he said, great, dude. Can you believe in whatever power does that? And that was a good enough start for me. And the big book says it really, really plainly, right? Like, I just need a little bit of willingness. You know, I don't need to be like all bought in. I don't need to be like, yeah, for sure I love God, right? Like, I can hate God and that's still good enough because it doesn't tell me that I have to love God, right? And believe that he's going to bring me to sanity, right? I just have to come to believe in a power greater than myself that will restore me to sanity. And if I hate him, that means I believe in him. Because if you hate something that you don't believe in, that's like hating Santa Claus.
Yeah, so nothing sections like I don't know. The concept of God was explained it was explained to me like this a long time ago. My first time around, and like I should have listened then, but I didn't. And it's kind of like believing in God is like believing in gravity. You can walk around and pretend it doesn't exist because you can't see it, but you're probably gonna get really hurt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good one, dude.
so yeah, all right. So I guess tell us where it all began. Who are you? Give us your pitch, and I'll just kind of ask you questions.
Yeah, dude. So, I grew up in a small town in Illinois, right outside of Chicago, close to Northwestern. It's called Skokie. My dad was in prison most of my life. My mom was an alcoholic growing up. And so I just kind of did whatever I wanted, ran the streets, hung out, had a good time. Got introduced to substances pretty young. I want to say like 9, 10, 11, somewhere around there. I don't really remember the time frame. A lot's pretty blurred for me. But I found substances and I had a good time, and some vivid memories that I have is I remember being at Joey Heinrich's house. We would sit at Joey Heinrich's house every Friday night. I'd go there. We
Wait,
Yeah, shout out Joey Heinrich, dude. And shout out Joey Heinrich's mom because she would get blacked out drunk on a bottle of wine and pass out, and we would just get high in her house. And dude, we would smoke weed and drink some of her wine, and then we'd go and we'd throw on some boxing gloves and turn off the lights and fight at 2 o'clock in the morning in the living room. And I just remember leaving his house every Sunday night and going, man, I can't wait to get back there next weekend. And it started out because the book talks about how I enjoy the effect of alcohol and drugs, right? And for me, that was the case. I enjoyed the effect, and that carried on throughout life. And we had gotten evicted from the place that we were living in. I was living with a family friend. I was going out every day and partying, getting high before school, getting high after school on the weekends, and and I started to face some consequences, little arrest here. Some running with the cops without getting arrested. And, my mom's crying at the police station at 5 o'clock in the morning. She's picking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning on the side of the road because I got too drunk with some friends and couldn't walk. And I just remember like all these consequences would come up and my mom would just like be so disappointed and angry and I didn't understand. And my first introduction to 12-step recovery was my mom because she got sober when we got evicted, and every Sunday she would either pick me up and we'd get food before or we'd get food after, but we'd get food at some point and then there'd be a meeting and we go to a noon meeting in Winnetka, Illinois. And I'd sit in this room and it was like your stereotypical AA, what you see in a movie, right? Everyone's in a circle, right? And they're talking about their feelings and they're talking about God. And my mom's crying. And I'm just like, this is bullshit, dude. What are they doing here? How is this helping my mom not drink? And, I remember they passed to me one time and they were like, "Do you want to say anything?" And I don't remember what I said. It would probably be more impactful if I did, but I just remember after I said it, I felt like free. I felt so relieved. I felt like one of and a part of, and I'd never felt that. I'd always felt like I had to fit in somewhere. And and things progressed, right? Like I started getting in more trouble, having more consequences with the people around me, right? Whether it was girlfriends, friends, family, and towards the very end of 2016 was the first time that I got sober. I had sold my iPhone 7 for a very small amount of substances. I was getting ready to rob a 7-Eleven, and another drug addict told me that was a terrible idea. Everything was gone. Materially, emotionally, my friends were done with me and said like, dude, until you get some help, don't call us. And the last straw was my mom came to me and she said, I love you and I care about you and I'll always love you because you're my son, but I don't like you and I don't want to be anywhere near you. And she said, so either you're going to do something different or you're going to get the fuck out of my house. And I just remember in that moment, I didn't know what to do. And I went into my room and I sat there and I put on some sad music because you always got to put on sad music when you're sad to make yourself sadder and feel
Oh
more
yeah.
self-pity. And I contemplated ending my life because I just didn't see another way out. I didn't see a way where I could like stop using because I had tried that time and time and time again. And 2, 3 days later, I was loaded again. And I didn't see a life where I could continue to use and have any sort of like success or joy or happiness. And so I walked out to my mom and I said, okay, I'll do something different. What do you want me to do? And she said, I want you to have a conversation with my friend's husband. And the drug addict in me was like, sick. That's easy, dude. I'll go have a conversation with this guy. I'll convince him. And this guy wasn't in AA, right? He was just some dude that went to my mom's church, and we sat in a Denny's in the middle of winter in Chicago, and I'm high out of my mind, and I don't remember anything, but we sat there for 2 hours, and at the end of it, I said, okay. And he said, okay, what? I said, I'll go to treatment. And I didn't go to a treatment center. Once again, I do psych wards, right? You can always go to a psych ward and get out of things. And so that's what I did. And it wasn't until, about a month later that, I really went to a meeting for the first time and tried to do this. And, and it was a Tuesday night. I got a sponsor. He gave me step one work to do, some stuff to write out. And that Saturday I got loaded. And for the first time in my life, I had not wanted to do that. Right. Like genuinely, like I was sober. I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm going to do AA. I'm sold on this thing. I want to change my life. And I still got loaded anyways. And, it wrecked me. I'd never felt that shame, guilt, and remorse like that. I'd felt shame, guilt, and remorse for other things, right? For hurting my family or cheating on girls or robbing my friends or whatever. But I'd never felt guilt, shame, and remorse about like my own goals that I had set and falling short of them. And I called my mom and I said, I fucked up. I got high. And, she was pissed and she took me to a meeting that night. And that really started my first journey in sobriety. And so I stayed sober for about 6 months and, dude, I got a lot more that I could go into, but, I stayed sober for about 6 months and I really only did 1 through 9. And I didn't do 10, 11, and 12. And as a result of that, I got loaded again, and then June 6th of 2017, right. Me and my sponsor met at a McDonald's at 9 o'clock at night and started the step work again. And I've been sober since.
That's the thing. I think that there's a lot of people out there who have, I definitely have tried and failed before they got it. And I've even had a little bit of time just like you before. And and it feels different this time for me because I'm like, I'm connecting with a higher power. I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to do, you know? And I don't ever have to feel that shame anymore, that guilt, that shame. Because you're right, it's a completely different type of shame. When you let yourself down, it almost feels like pathetic, because like you're supposed to feel bad when you rob people, cheat on your girlfriend, whatever. But that's easily swept under the rug when you can blame it on alcohol or drugs or I was high or I was drunk,
Hmm.
whatever. If you're like stone cold sober and you let yourself down and you go out and you absolutely don't want to, there's things that come along with that fucking that eat you, So all right, yeah, and again, I'll ask you a couple questions about your story. If there's anything I don't want to answer, please feel free to refuse, and I'll call you pussy and then edit it out.
Love it.
Perfect. Uh, so yeah, you said I remember being right there. I sold my iPhone 5 for a
Mhm.
very small amount of substances back in like 2013. I think it was
Mhm.
from whenever it came out. I had like a shitty job where like my boss had an iPhone that he was getting rid of. I bought it and then like I think like I turned it on and had it in service for a month and then sold it. And it was for like the smallest amount of heroin that I could possibly. I think it was even. I don't know if it got well, but to be completely honest,
Yeah.
I mean, it was garbage and shit too. Like it wasn't even good. I was so pissed. Like I was like, dude, I gave up a working iPhone for some shitty heroin.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, and it's crazy like the insanity of stuff that I used to do like that. Looking back, and even in recovery, like the first time around, uh, even this time, I've done some stuff that I regret that I've had to make amends for in recovery. It doesn't mean that we're perfect people just because we get sober. We're gonna fuck up. You know what I'm saying? We're not perfect.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, this time it's a little bit different than it was the first time I got sober. You know, because the first time I got sober, it was always the excuse of like the people around them who were like friends of mine, like good friends that were
Yeah.
like trying to keep me accountable would be like, dude, no, you're fucking up. And I'd be like, well, my recovery doesn't have to look like yours. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? That's like the classic excuse from like any sponsors or anybody that's really fucking up when you get called out on your shit. It's well, my shit doesn't have to look like yours. Well,
Yeah.
there's a formula to this shit, and then there is because it works, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I was not happy before I relapsed. I would say I was fucking probably miserable the last year that I was sober before I relapsed. Yeah, this time it's just different. So, like, for you this time around, how is it different for you this time? Because, I mean, you said you had 6 months. What are the key differences? I know you said you're doing do 10, 11, or 12. Obviously, you're doing those this time. But is there anything else that you do differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll compare because the first 4.5 years of my sobriety really works really untreated, and so I'm gonna compare it to the last four. Uh, you know, one of the big things is 10, 11, and 12. I mean, it's just a fact, right? Like I thought they were optional, and part of that was like 10 I didn't need to do, right? Because I was 19 years old. And so to me, like I'd righted all my wrongs, right? I tried to make all my amends. And so I wouldn't need to make another amends again because I thought like by getting sober, I was going to be perfect still. And it was a delusion that I had. And I was young. I didn't know any better, right? And I didn't know that I had that delusion. That's just what I had. 11 was really plain, right? I thought I could just pray in the morning and pray at night, and that would be good enough. And I would never have to do anything else. And I never meditated because I didn't really know how to meditate as if there's a right way to do it. And 12 was really hard because, I'm in this small town. Most of the dudes that are getting sober are 40, 50, 60 years old, and I'm 19. And no one had ever told me, like, dude, you're not there to fix their problems. You're not there to solve things. You're just there to walk them through the steps the same way that you were walked through and carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous so that they never have to get loaded again. Right. And the best way to put it is what I'm doing is I'm standing there taking my sponsee's hand and putting it in the hand of God. That's it, you know? And so, this time, right? Like those are the biggest things, right? I pray and I meditate. I have 10-step accountability partners so that throughout my day, if I get jammed up about something, I can call them. If you think that a nightly inventory is your 10 steps, sorry, you're wrong, and you can talk to your sponsor about it. The 10 step has really, really clear instructions: watch, ask, discuss, turn. I got to do those things regularly because sometimes I get fearful. I still get resentful at times. And I have a tool, right? The 10 step to be able to help me get free of that. 11, growing this relationship with God that's helped me walk through some of the most difficult times in my life that I never anticipated having to deal with. And then 12, right? Carrying the message and practicing these principles in all my affairs. That was something that even at 7 years sober, I had to sit and look at myself in the mirror and go, am I doing this? Am I really living the practical program of action that this designed for living that they call it? Am I doing that on a daily basis? Because it's really easy to be a service junkie. Carry a bunch of H&Is, be a service here, be a service there, sponsor 15 dudes and have 17 in the book, right? But like, and my boy says this, and I love it, dude. Like, if you really want to know if you're practicing the principles in all your affairs, go home and ask your wife. Go home and ask your husband. Ask your boss and your coworkers. Ask your friends, because you can sound great. You can look great, but like, are you acting great? Are you acting as God designed you to act? And so those are the biggest things. Aside from that, honestly, like, and not to like, kind of rebuttal what I just said, but service, like carrying an H&I, sponsoring dudes, like those things were just huge for me. And really being like involved in the groups that I'm in, being one of and a part of, people knowing my name, me knowing theirs, and being like integral parts of that meeting where like if I'm not there, people call me and they're like, yo, where you at? Where you been at, dude? We're worried about you. Just want to make sure you're all right. Because before that wasn't the case. I just kind of pop around to a meeting, pop in, pop out. As soon as the prayer said, I'm out. And I got my first sponsor had the nickname JIT. I also got the nickname JIT, just in time, and it's because I show up right on time for the meeting, sometimes a little late, and it's because I didn't want to be one of and a part of.
And I can definitely tell you that's changed because we show up a little bit early to the one that we go to on Tuesday. But I think, like, for me, the thing on Tuesday that we do, and I think that it's still important, like, anybody that, hasn't experienced anything like that, like the fellowship or like being around a group of strong men that you can actually fucking call and trust to call when shit does go south in their life. I think that is super important. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? I mean, it's one of the most important things. Like, when I first got sober this time, my sponsor told me you need 5 people that you can call for anything. And one of those 5 people that are in the program will pick up the phone. And if not, you know what I'm saying? Like, he said just keep going down the list, but you made a solid 5. And I think that's great advice. And to me, like the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting is just as important as the meeting on Tuesdays. I get to actually talk to a bunch of dudes that, have a lot of knowledge and like ask them advice about shit that's going on in my life. I mean, yeah, the stuff right here from the podium, I mean, don't get me wrong. When like the dude with 3 days comes up and like he's like, I'm gonna keep this short, and then talks for 5 minutes about like everything he doesn't know. That's sick. But like, like the real shit, it's like the before and after the movie and getting to talk to dudes who've experienced it and been there. Um, so yeah, I want to tell a story real quick because I remember meeting you.
okay,
And all right, it was because you asked Tom to speak at this place out in like Mesa. It's like the Mesa Olano Club. And I was still on you to being sober. Like I think maybe I had 4 months, 5 months. And I went there with them, and we were able to do stunts. Talking about the sexual inventory. And I remember laughing really, really hard, like overhearing your conversation, because Tom was my sponsor at the time. And I was like, well, shit, if it doesn't work out with him, I'm going to ask this guy to sponsor me because unfortunately, I relate to a lot of what this fucking dude is saying. Like, you were just so, like, raw and honest with responses. I think you were telling one of them that he was a fucking idiot for, like, stringing his between with this girl or something. Yeah, that's really not gonna work out for you. You're being fucking dumb.
shocker.
But I was a huge pussy and never got your number. I'm still a huge pussy. I mean, oh wait, but yeah, I mean, I'm still age when it comes to certain things. I'm going to say, I don't mean it in the traditional sense. Like, I will fight somebody at like an
Yeah.
airport terminal when I know they don't have a weapon, and I'm definitely going to lose. I actually never really want to fight ever, but I feel like I still get the other side, like getting the shit beat out of me that I never cared to like focus on the other side because it's really hard to defend yourself against like life, which is really what's kicking my ass. Like
Yeah.
addiction, relationship, anxiety. And when we have a heroin addiction, it's pretty tough to defend it. People are the least of my concerns. Anyway, yeah,
Well, and dude, it's funny because one, you do have my number now. Uh,
yeah.
two, it's funny you say that just because like if I don't get raw and honest with a dude when we're talking about 4 and 5, I'm doing them a disservice. You know, sometimes I've been told that sometimes I'm too honest with my sponsees, and the fact is, like, I never want to paint a depiction of the man that I am incorrectly, because if I paint this depiction that I'm not like you, right? I'm different. I'm so much better now, right? I almost become unachievable, and at 8 years, I still fuck shit up. I still make mistakes. I still say the wrong thing. I still may treat someone poorly. I may still react, wrongly. I may make the wrong decision or do something intentionally that I know is wrong, and like in my heart feel it, right? I'm a human. I'm gonna have those moments, and like I just think it's so important to paint a clear depiction of what this thing looks like, because if we paint this depiction that these dudes need to come in, do this work, I wasn't like them, right? And then I take them through this work, and then I go, okay, now you need to be perfect. I'm setting them up for failure. They're going to think they can never, get angry with their wife and fall short in that way. When the fact is you just maybe will, right? They're going to think that they can't have a day where they slack off at work and feel guilty about it. And then they're going to go get loaded because they're like, I'm not supposed to feel this way. I wasn't supposed to do that. And it's like, no, no, no. You're right. You weren't supposed to do that, but to feel that much guilt, shame, and remorse about it is actually morbid reflection. And I'm setting you up to think that like I'm on this pedestal of how good I am, when in reality I'm just another fucking junkie like you.
Exactly. And like, and if I couldn't relate cool or like and then like to me like, that's the most impressive thing in the world is when I meet somebody and I know that they've been through the fucking gambit and
Hmm.
like they'll have the ability to be this terrible person, you know, and it like shows their past shows that they're dangerous people, but you know what I'm saying? They've done crimes, hurt people, physically, mentally, emotionally. Well, today, the result of this thing that they did, like they choose to be a better person. And like that to me shows what this program can do.
Yeah.
And you know, and again, like you said, you know, you're not going to be perfect. I fall short. I fall short. I mean, I can 1,000 times today, probably. You know what I'm saying? Like, but today I get to take accountability for it, and I use them as a learning experience instead of like, fuck, I fucked up. You know, I mean, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I fucked up. The person that like I fucked up with probably doesn't even give a shit as much as I do about it, you know, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
And if they do, they may never forgive me, but that's fine. Life goes on, you know.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's the time I met you. Because you were sitting there talking about the sexual inventory, and you're like shooting out all your functions for like getting back in a shitty relationship, and like you were saying some really funny things, and I was laughing to myself, and yeah, and I think I tried to introduce myself to you, but you were super busy, and like you had all your fancies there, and I didn't want to like impose, but I thought it was really fun. I think I went to Mesa Auto Club in like
Yep.
2024. Did you
Yeah,
think?
yeah, it was probably like middle to end of 2024. I had
Yeah,
just lost my job and picked that up as a home group. And it was a speaker meeting at that time. Now it's an open discussion meeting with a topic. But yeah, I was a speaker seeker for that meeting, and luckily Tom lived close by and said 8 o'clock on a Friday night. And he came out and crushed it. It's funny because I didn't remember that until you just said that. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, yeah. Uh but it's it's wild how like this is something that I think about often when we talk about like sometimes people don't want to like talk and don't want to like share things because they think like people aren't going to get things out of them, right? And they think that what they say isn't like they listen to I have a sponsee who constantly says like, dude, like I wish that I could break down the book like you, or I wish I could speak like you, or this, and I constantly have to remind him that like one, you're not meant to. At the end of the day, like one part of it is experience for me and doing it so many times over and over again, but two, like I'm just a different person and I'm not going to reach the people that you reach, and you never know who that's going to be. For me, in this situation, right, it was sitting in a meeting doing step work with sponsees, not even directly talking to you, where the impact was made. And so we never know where God's going to have us be helpful. And those dudes, I'd almost bet either half or none of them are still sober. I couldn't even tell you who I was with and whether I still sponsor them or not. But like, if I don't, that just goes to show that like it wasn't for them, right? Or at
yeah,
least not in that moment.
exactly. And no, and that's the thing. Like I remember my first taste of recovery. I mean, I kind of was an alcoholic and a drug addict or whatever. Um, and like I remember my first like meeting. My friend's little sister, her dad was like in town, and he was like a pilot or whatever. And like, I guess their mom was like, "You need to take Tim to a meeting with you because if he was in the program and I was a really bad alcoholic, then he didn't have a car and I had a car, and I think he just wanted to get to a meeting, and he was like, hey, I'll take you to Deadlands or whatever if you fucking bring me to this meeting." And
Mhm.
like, then I realized that he was like, bringing me to a meeting. And we sat down and talked, and like, I just remember like asking him to drive to the meeting because I was loaded and like couldn't fucking drive.
Mhm.
I had a keg in my trunk and like all this stuff in the car, and like, and I remember shortly after that, because he told me, he was like, we end up in Gales Institution of Dead. And I was like, okay, maybe some nerds do, but like not me, you know? And I think
Yeah.
a month later, I got a DUI. And like,
Mhm.
fuck, had to go to treatment after that. Because I was 19 and failed 3 blood tests in a row for cocaine. They finally arrested me, and they were like, you have an issue. You want
Yeah.
to go to rehab or jail? And I'm like, what rehab am I going to? You know? It was one of the ones that like, it was a halfway house that like let you out to do meetings and shit. And I just faked it. Like, I just signed our shit at the moon just go play pool. But I mean, I remember it making an impact because the one meeting that I did go to, one of the dudes in that one of the old timers was like, "You're probably not going to get it this time, but I hope and pray that you live long enough to." So I'm like, "Okay, thanks, I guess."
Yeah.
What the fuck? But you're right, and and it's fucking crazy. If we pick up, I just remember them, the people you're with, we were like. Newcomers like, no, we had to get them back to their halfway house. And I was like telling Tom because at the time I had just moved from like work site, which was like an inpatient program, to halfway house. And I was there like a month, and then they were closing down. They gave us all
Mhm.
2 weeks to like leave, and I was like telling Tom about it, and I remember telling you about it, and like I was like, yeah, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and like you probably lose. And Tom's like, what? And you're like, if you don't do something soon, you're probably confused. And I'm like, oh wow, I guess you're right. And
Yeah.
you're like, you'll find another sober living, and you just reach back out to the people you were with, you're gonna get fucked up. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't want that.
Well, because dude, sometimes people overcomplicate this shit. Like, don't get me wrong. Could a dude be getting kicked out of his sober living because they're about to close down and like maybe go back to his old life? And if he's like really rooted in his recovery, like stay sober? Yes. But the majority of people, when they go back to their old circumstances, if they haven't built a strong enough foundation, they're going to get loaded again because they're not bought in. They don't have any accountability around them. And do I think that you need a sober living to stay sober? No. Do I think that you need to go to treatment to stay sober? No. If you need a detox, fine. But the fact is, when I got sober the second time, I didn't go to detox. I didn't go to treatment. I didn't move into a sober living. I just did AA. And like, you don't need those things. They're there to support. And so, I don't want to put too much dependence on them. But if I'm actively, right, ignoring and avoiding the responsibilities that I have going, well, if I get kicked out, I'll just go back to my mom's. It's no big deal, right? Or I'll just call one of my boys that I know that's getting loaded, and he'll let me stay on his couch until I figure something out. And then it's a month later, and I haven't figured anything out, and he's getting ready to kick me out too. Like my problems start to pile up on me, and they become astonishingly difficult to solve. And I just don't understand why. And it's all because I avoid things out of fear, or really just like blatant like disregard for caring. But that's why like you just keep it simple. Like, hey, dude, do you want to use? No, then just go on another sober living. Make a phone call. It takes 10 minutes to make a phone call. And then you
Yeah.
probably do like an hour intake, and they're like, okay, come piss. You can move in. You got rent.
And literally angrier than that. Like I mean, I think it was the next day or the day after when I finally like got around to actually putting in forward to me. And on recovery, and even in recovery, I think a lot of the times people can blow problems out of proportion. And I think the longer you stay in recovery and the more you have God in your life, you kind of see that every problem is sort of not that big of a deal. Like they're all solvable. And then it's not solvable. Oh, then it wasn't meant to be solved, and you just work around it. I mean, and the truth is, I thought it was going to take me weeks to find another sober living, and there's 1,000 of them in Phoenix. So like, it took me 10 minutes. I called Joey, and he was like, "Come live at one of the houses at Purpose," and I said, "Okay." He was like, "You want to come tomorrow?" And I said, "Yes," and that was it. Super easy. It wasn't insurmountable. I looked at it as this huge mountain, but I mean, in early recovery, everything is kind of a big deal.
And that's what a sponsor is for, right? Like, because a sponsor's one, I have delusions. Everything I think of is fake. I make shit up in my head and I go, oh, I'm never going to overcome this. I'm getting kicked out of my sober living. I'll never get into another one. There's probably only like 3 others and they're all full. And your sponsor's like, you're an idiot. There's thousands of Phoenix. And I'm sure half of them, if not 3/4 of them, have at least one open bed. And you're like, that can't be true. And he's like, why don't you make a phone call and find out? And you call and they're like, yeah, we've got 6 open beds, dude. Come in tomorrow. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's it? Why did I spend 2 weeks worrying about this?
And the truth of the matter is, you're right. Most people do have a bunch of open space because, I mean, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people that are trying to get and stay sober, or that are willing to do the work. I mean, that's why the meetings kind of stay the same size. Pretty
Yeah.
much. They and it's fucked up because like I looked at in early recovery, I think that's for me is one of the biggest differences today. Is like I don't look at problems as like my limitations. I just look at them as things that are going to bring me closer to God in the end. Because
Yeah.
I feel if you argue for your limitations or you argue your limitations, you tend to get to keep them.
Mhm. Well, and My first sponsor said it to me, and I think I talked about it a little bit earlier, but like I can try and fit in all that I want. I can try and fit in at a job that I'm not meant to be at. I can try and fit in a relationship that I'm not meant to be in. I can try and fit in here. I can try and fit in there. But the fact is, I belong places. There are places that I'm meant to be. And like, if I try and, like you said, right, if I try and argue with these limitations, if I try and force myself into a box that I'm not meant to go into, I'm going to have a pretty unpleasant life, right? Because I'm never going to fit in that box. It's like a puzzle piece, you know? If I
Yeah,
if I try and force a puzzle piece into the picture, it doesn't matter if the rest of the pieces fit around it. This last piece is going to look bad, and there's going to be two pieces off because those two pieces are meant to be flopped. And so your picture's not going to look right. And I'm going to look at the picture and go, why is this such a bad picture? Why is it so messed up? And it's because I'm trying to force these two pieces into the wrong spot. And that's what I'll try and do in my life. I'll try and force myself to stay in a relationship that I know I'm not meant to be in and hold someone hostage and and end up unhappy and blame them or
yeah,
blame outside circumstances and not just understand that, like, bro, I was meant to walk away months ago, you know?
yeah.
And this isn't a sign for some newcomer to divorce his wife. You know what I mean? Like, this is
No,
just like, this is like when I really pray and meditate, when I'm really talking to my sponsor, and when I'm getting guidance and feedback from the people around me that I'm making dumb decisions and I probably shouldn't be in a relationship, let alone with this person. I should probably take that feedback.
absolutely. And more, and like it's like there's a huge difference between problems that like are overcomable, because nothing in life that's worth it is ever easy, but you get it if you have God in your life, you get a feeling when like there's a problem that's meant to turn you in a different direction or a problem that you're meant to solve.
Mhm.
There's a huge difference. And it takes a while to recognize that. And I still have trouble doing that today. That's why I have a sponsor. Like I just call him,
Yeah.
and he fucking tells me,
Yeah.
what.
That's exactly right, dude.
And it's fucked up because, like, I mean, you have a great sponsor too. Your fucking sponsor is awesome, man. Great dude. And yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was cool seeing. I remember going to that golf tournament that we were at, the one that you did all the photography for. And
Yeah.
I remember the funniest thing that happened that day was when Alex we're the brand new director into the wave, and you
Yep.
got to film and then like put that awesome music behind it, like
Yep.
tell that guy was so upset. Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's one of my best friends, man. And I was like, as soon as I did it, there was a voiceover. It said every swing, and I was like, I know exactly where this clip is going. And and it was awesome, dude. And we still laugh at that video today. I'm in a group chat with him and his family and his girlfriend, I literally sent that clip as soon as the golf tournament ended, right in that group chat. And but those are the things that people don't see it through 30 days sober,
no,
because you show up to if you, and this obviously wasn't you, but like someone shows up 30 days sober to this golf tournament and they're of service and they're just, picking up trash or they're organizing things or they're selling raffle tickets and they just like see all these people with these relationships that they've built. And it's like, dude, like this took time. Alex and I met when Alex was a newcomer and I hustled him for $1 so he could buy a raffle ticket. He lost the raffle, but I convinced him that he was gonna win, and like our friendship started there. And then a year later, right, I met him, but I didn't know his name, and people were talking about this dude. They're saying, Alex, oh, the Alex L, Alex L. I said, who is this dude? They said, bro, you know this guy? I said, I have no idea who that is. And they said, dude, that guy. And they point at him. I said, I love that dude. And like we sat there and we talked and I was and our friendship grew. We saw each other on Tuesday nights and we became closer. He asked me to be his accountability partner and do 10 steps. And he would use me as a 10-step partner, right? And like slowly but surely, like we became friends. And the sponsee that passed away was one of his really good friends, right? And I had the privilege to sponsor him because he trusted me enough to do that, And so when that funeral happened, like we got to fly back together, right? And I got to meet his family, though on unfortunate circumstances, right? I got to meet his family and his friends from his hometown and once again grow closer in our friendship. And it sounds like when you're 30 days sober, it sounds like, dude, I don't want to deal with all that. That's like a lot. And you're right. I wouldn't have wanted to deal with that at 30 days sober. And that's why God didn't give it to me at 30 days sober. He didn't give me the friendships that I had. He gave me dudes that guided me and directed me and mentors, right? The friends that he gave me were also in sobriety and we grew up in sobriety together. And I'm still friends with some of them today, I don't know.
yeah,
It's a lot. It's dope, dude. I love it.
it's crazy. Like, that's why, like, I always tell people, I mean, my three closest friends in recovery. One of them I barely talk to anymore, but he's still one of my best friends. One is me, Max, Adam, and Joe, and we were
Mm,
all at the New Solutions the first time I got sober. I was there the day Max got there, and like we've been friends ever since. I mean, of course, in my addiction, I pushed them away. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want them around when I was relapsing because they would tell me some shit I didn't want to hear necessarily, you know, and then and fuck that, you know, why do drugs and go around a bunch of sober people is a waste of time and money, really. Economically, it's just not a good decision.
yeah,
But I mean, today I get to build relationships that, like, old relationships, I get to fix them and create new ones that are like amazing, you know, stuff
yeah,
like who do I trust? Because when I was out there using, of course, I knew a lot of people, and I could call people and like for drug stuff, I call it. But would I trust them? No. And like I would say I trusted them, but I really wouldn't. You know, like every now and then you got that best friend, that using buddy, and if it came down to it, like would you really hand that to your life? Probably not. Like when they say you would, but like you know, in the back of your heart that if you're not looking, that dude is gonna steal your money, fuck your girl, and take your car if you can possibly avoid, you know? Just off a personal gain. In recovery, it's the exact opposite. You're gonna make dudes that are actually there because they give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? And they truly give a fuck because that's a person that they've become. And they weren't that person when they came here, so I don't think they're better or like just built that way. It took work to get there, you know what I'm saying? And it's
yeah,
crazy to see the fucking work that people have put in and the people they've become today. And yeah, man. So all right, so if anybody does want the wedding or bar mitzvah or whatever photographed, is it cool to put your contacts in the title of this or in the
yeah,
comments
yeah,
so that we can
absolutely.
get in? I know you have a photography business. I know you got some things you're working on. So is one thing plug to the people that are listening? Go ahead and do it, man.
Yeah, obviously my photography and videography business, social media management, all things content. You can follow me on Instagram at Bookbag Visuals, BOOKBAGVISUALS. My personal Instagram is IAM Matteo Martinez, so MatteoMartinez. That's where you'll see a lot of my, I am slowly starting to build more of a fitness mind. I've been on a weight loss journey, and so I post a lot about that. And then also, that's where you're going to see anything music related. So I've spent the last almost year and a half, almost maybe 2 years now, coming up on really just kind of spending time with God, reflecting, meditating on music, and really finding my identity in it again after a pretty significant rebrand in 2024. And so I am going to start releasing music pretty shortly here. I'm not going to say when yet, just because nothing is set in stone, but we're anticipating in the next couple weeks for some of the first couple songs to drop and just slowly start dropping, likely about once a month. So tons of music coming. Really, really excited, and I know I just want to say thanks again for having me on. This is always a huge privilege and an honor, dude.
Of course, man, and you know, with your music stuff, I don't know if you've ever this with the spot. I'm gonna plug that real quick. They're doing a thing called Second Saturdays. So every second Saturday of the month, instead of First Fridays, they're doing like a sober version of First Friday. You know, it's all about recovery and music and art and people perform or whatever. So maybe we'll see you there, hopefully. You know. Also, I'm gonna talk about your weight loss journey for a second, dude, because you're
Yeah.
fucking incredible, Jelly Roll.
Thanks,
You're
dude.
losing weight and shit and fucking looking and handsome as fuck. So like.
Yeah.
Yeah, when did it start? Like, how much have you lost, dude?
Yeah, dude. So I just want to give a huge shout out to one of my boys over at Phoenix Roofing. That's where I work now. Specifically Riley Michael, dude. He came to me and was like, "Yo, dude, like, what's up?" And we had a conversation about my weight. And no one had had a conversation with me about my weight. I'd always brought it up, right? But no one had ever like really sat me down and said like, "Hey, dude, like, what's up with this? Like, why, right?" And we had an honest conversation, man. And he just said it encouraged me. He had encouraged me, like, bro, like, go to the gym 3, 4 times a week. Start with that, right? Like, diet, this, that, the third, and ultimately, right, that was in November. You know, I've shredded weight. I've always shredded weight when I've started working out, even when I was 17, 18 years old. And so, you know, now this was in November. It's mid-January. I'm down about 40 pounds right now.
Fucking
And
awesome.
honestly, it's come from working out. It started with 3 days a week, grew to 4, became 5, and now I'm working out about 5 days a week pretty consistently, taking some rest days in between. Um, I'm, eating a lot healthier. You know, I'll still maybe go out like today, you know, at work. We went to Jersey Mike's yesterday. We got pie together, but like most of my meals are meal prep. You know, I have a really great roommate and he's awesome about helping me stay consistent with the meal prepping and you know, helping cook some of the rice or cooking some of the meat and just letting me eat some of the meal preps. And so that those have been like the biggest disciplines is like being in the gym and then a pretty consistent meal prep has been huge for me.
I know you're the guy that goes to the nights that does meal prep, right? Like, doesn't even have a business that does that.
In the East Valley, yeah, my boy Richard does it. I'd have to look up his thing if I wanted to plug him, but Richard's
Yeah.
dope. He has a really great meal prep business, and a lot of dudes in the rooms use him for meal prep.
Yeah, Anthony Mano too does meal
Oh,
prep.
and I
Yeah.
heard Anthony Mano does great meal preps. I've seen his
Oh,
meals and they look
his
phenomenal.
cooking is fantastic. I actually had
Yeah.
him on the pod, but when I was editing the episode, I was using the old laptop and it got deleted, so I got to
Oh,
fucking do a whole episode. And in God's name, I guess, do it
you've
again.
got
So
something better in store.
exactly,
Yeah,
but yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on, dude. It was a pleasure getting to talk to you for an hour. And I will let you get to whatever the fuck you got going on. I heard you're on the family with us, so you probably got to run and call that guy back. But dude, congratulations on the weight loss, on the new job, on everything, dude.
yeah,
You're doing big things. You're an inspiration to a lot of people out there. So thanks for taking the time out of your day to do this. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll keep you updated on when we're gonna post this and everything. We'll see when we're gonna
perfect.
post it. But we'll let you know. But
Works for me, dude. You're the man, bro.
what we do, just send your contacts and stuff, and we'll make sure
Yeah,
to put it in the title or in the comments or attach it somehow to the video. So,
perfect. Will do, dog.
all right, well, love you, man. Thank
Love you
you.
too, bro.
All right, later.
Later.